Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Pennsylvania School Breakfast Initiative. This webinar is being presented through Project PA, a collaboration between the Pennsylvania Department of Education, Division of Food and Nutrition, and Penn State University. I'm Elaine McDonald, Director of Project PA. Before we get started, just a few things to point out. We'll take questions following today's presentations. You can use the chat box on the right hand of the screen to submit your questions, and please feel free to submit questions at any time during the presentations, and we'll save them until all of the presentations are completed. In the file share box at the lower left hand of the screen, you'll find a few things. First, you'll see the slides for today's presentations. You'll also find a resource list about school breakfast that was compiled by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Finally, there is the school breakfast mini grant application in the file share box, and we'll talk about that later in the presentation. And later in the webinar, you will find a certificate in the file share box that will document your participation in the webinar. This webinar is being recorded, and we will post the rebroadcast on the Project PA website at a later date. So our plan for today, we have a series of presentations. First, I will provide some just background about school breakfast, and then we will hear from two individuals who will talk about how improving their school breakfast programs and implementing alternative programs played out in their school districts. We have Dr. Jill Kozer, Education and Child Development Impact Team Leader, Community Action Partnership of Lancaster County, and Jill is also the former principal in the Lancaster School District. We also have Michael Mateo, principal of Evergreen Elementary School in the Gateway School District. And finally, we'll have Jennifer Jarrett, who is the School Nutrition Education and Programs Manager for the Pennsylvania Department of Education, Division of Food and Nutrition. So let's get started with an overview about school breakfast, the benefits, the status, and some alternative serving methods. First, we all know that childhood hunger is a serious problem. In fact, 1 out of 5 American children struggle with hunger, and 3 out of 4 teachers say they teach kids who come to school hungry. This is probably something that you are all familiar with. I know in our work with school food service programs, we often that participation in school meals is usually highest on Mondays and Fridays because at least some segment of the student population may not have adequate food on the weekends. So obviously this has some detrimental, immediate, short-term impacts, but it also has long-term impacts on students' future success, as childhood hunger negatively impacts health, academic achievement, and future economic prosperity. But eating breakfast is one way to begin to address that issue. Eating breakfast is associated with a lot of positive outcomes in terms of academics and behavior. I'm not going to read all of these to you as you can see that it's associated with higher test scores, higher math and reading grades, cognitive performance, as well as behavioral improvements such as decreased tardiness and absenteeism and fewer disciplinary problems. In terms of just school breakfast, according to a 2013 national report, and this was conducted by Share Our Strength through their No Kids Hungry campaign, they looked at breakfast in the classroom in some schools in Maryland and found that the schools that implemented breakfast in classroom, the students on average attended 1.5 more days of school per school year and achieved 17.5% higher scores on standardized math tests. It's not just improvements in academic performance and behavior, but school breakfast can also positively impact health. School breakfast has been shown to be healthier than breakfast from home, offering less sugar and more fruits and more milk. And school breakfast participants have been shown to have healthier body weight and BMI or body mass index, and healthier overall diets throughout the day, so more likely to adequately consume vitamins and micronutrients. So where is the breakfast program offered? Well, nationally, just under 90,000 sites operated the school breakfast program in 2016-17. About 92.5% of the sites that operated the National School Lunch Program that school year also operated school breakfast. But we have a range, with Texas having 100% down to Wisconsin and New Jersey at 81%. In Pennsylvania, the percentage is 91.2%, so that's below that national average and ranks us at 34th among the states. We can look at it another way, not just in terms of what schools are offering school breakfast, but in terms of student participation. So nationally, just under 57% of low-income students who participated in school lunch also participate in school breakfast. Again, there's a range of 85% for West Virginia to 40% for Utah. At Pennsylvania, we are at 50%, according to the latest report, which ranks us at 41. So that means that little more than 336,000 low-income Pennsylvania students who participate in lunch are not participating in breakfast. So why, if breakfast has all of these positive impacts, are we not seeing the participation levels? Where there are a lot of reasons. One might be a social stigma. In some cases, school breakfast is perceived as being for the low-income students. So this can be a disincentive for students to participate. There are also some attitudinal barriers. Breakfast is sometimes seen as not something that schools should be involved in, not the role for the students. There's also time, and that's a big issue, and time is, in a way, kind of connected to the location of where the breakfast is offered sometimes. So rushed morning schedules or bus arrival times might make it difficult for students to participate in breakfast, especially if they have to walk to a cafeteria and then to a classroom. That might be difficult to accomplish in time. Also, students might choose to participate in other activities, socialize, be with friends, rather than participate in breakfast. And at the high school level, teenagers might be more likely to want to sleep in as late as possible and not give up that time to get to school in time to eat breakfast. We used to hear sometimes that a concern was that school breakfast could cut into instructional time. But in Pennsylvania, breakfast in the classroom counts as instructional time, and this is through a basic education circular that was released many years ago. If you see under number 2, activities that count as pupil instruction time, included in that is students eating breakfast during the regularly scheduled homeroom periods or during classroom instruction. So to address some of these issues, especially in terms of time and location, there are some alternative methods that have been introduced that have really been shown to increase participation in school breakfast. So we have breakfast in the classroom, offered at the start of class, obviously, and in the classroom. This works well when all students are eating free of charge and at the elementary level. Second chance level, as the name implies, gives students a second chance to have breakfast if they were either not able to get it first thing in the morning or maybe were not hungry first thing in the morning. So second chance breakfast is offered mid-morning, at recess, or between classes. It might be offered in the cafeteria or from multiple locations. Grab-and-go breakfast is offered before school or during mid-morning and from multiple locations. And in this method, it really involves looking at the traffic pattern within the school and where students enter the building and where they congregate, and placing service carts in those locations. So these models, as I said, have been shown to increase participation. Breakfast in the classroom has been shown to increase participation as high as 98%. Second chance breakfast has been shown to have an average of 15 to 40% increase. And for grab-and-go breakfast, more than 70% of schools that implement this method have been shown to increase their participation. So while those are just numbers, I'm now going to turn it over to our presenters who are going to talk about how some of these alternative programs played out in their school districts. So I'm first going to turn it over to Jill Kozer as we pull up her presentation.
Okay, good morning. Thank you so much, Elaine. Thank you for the opportunity to share through this webinar our school breakfast initiatives that we have going on in the Lancaster County area. As Elaine said, my name is Jill Kozer, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a partnership that we have that's been supporting school breakfast in the Lancaster County area through the School District of Lancaster, the Community Action Partnership of Lancaster County, the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank, and Hunger Free Lancaster County. So personally for me, as an educator, access to school breakfast for children who may be experiencing food insecurity has become one of those critical points in my journey toward demonstrating my own personal values of excellence, equity, and empathy in the school setting. As the principal of Robert Fulton Elementary School in the School District of Lancaster, the School District of Lancaster is an urban school district in the middle of Amish country, for those of you who are not quite familiar with our area of the county. As the principal at Robert Fulton, our implementation of a school-wide breakfast model was really a drastic turning point for not only our school in our journey to promote equity for all of our students, but also for me personally as an educator, as we really embraced the model of the whole child, whole community. So school breakfast was a major piece of developing into a full-service community school for us at Fulton Elementary School. I wish that I could say that our school breakfast journey started out of a deep awareness of how important food insecurity and utilizing a breakfast model to promote equity is to our students and families. For me, it was actually one of happenstance. Our building underwent a major renovation project, and we transitioned from being a walk-up neighborhood school where we only ran one bus to our school each day, everybody else walked, to a model that bused our students from their homes in their neighborhood to a temporary location across town. So for those of you who are on today, school administrators who've been through a renovation project, you know how crazy they can be and how many individual factors and variables you need to be planning for and addressing throughout the overall project. And so one of those pieces for us was looking at our school breakfast program. At that time, about 93% of our students were qualifying for free and reduced lunch. And so we knew that the traditional breakfast model we had been implementing, where students would come a half an hour early to school to get their breakfast, we knew that model would no longer be able to work because now all 400 of our students were being bused and dropped off within a 5 to 10 minute window of each other. So we knew that as a staff we needed to come up with a plan for how we were going to address the school breakfast piece during our renovation project. The team worked together. We brought in our teachers first, met with them, got their concerns and ideas. We met with our custodial staff. We met with our food service department, and we worked out a plan that we thought would address the school breakfast schedule. Each of the kids, as they got off the bus, went through our cafeteria line, and we ended up using a breakfast in the classroom model. So when you heard about those alternative models for school breakfast in the classroom is where all of the children are having their food delivered to the room, and they're eating in the room with their teacher. I will tell you, we were immediately caught off guard by the benefits of changing to an after-the-bell breakfast in the classroom model. Yes, we definitely had the never-ending issue of kindergartners and pancake syrup, yogurt, juice, you name it. It was always a concern that we were working on. But overall, our school breakfast experiment was truly a success. The teachers immediately began reporting more connectivity with their students because they would use that time to build the relationships, to check in on each of our kids as they came through the door. Our students were reporting fewer hunger and dehydration issues, and we were sending fewer kids to the nurse each day. What's absolutely amazing, again, for our school and district administrators on the webinar today, what's amazing is that in that year, going through a renovation project in a relocated building, our PSSA scores were actually the highest that they had been in many years of the school's history. And so, I look back now and I can see how important the school breakfast program was to promoting that academic success each and every day that we were in that year. I have to tell you, we came back to our newly renovated school, and we still didn't see it. We didn't have our aha moment yet about the vital, critical importance of school breakfast and after-the-bell options. So the next fall, we came back. We went back to our normal 8 to 8:30 breakfast model. And, we expected our kids who wanted that extra meal to find a way to show up for school early. We have a lot of families who work third shift, and so the primary caregiver may have just been coming home from work at that time, rushing to get everybody out the door, get there in time for the before-school breakfast model. But then also, we have a lot of families that work first shift and start their shift at 7 a.m., and so we had older siblings bringing their younger siblings to school, and it was difficult to get kiddos out for that before-school breakfast model, especially our most vulnerable and food insecure families. So we came back to our newly renovated school, and on day one, 100 students showed up for the 8 to 8:30 breakfast model. They made it. They knew this was important. They had gotten into the routine of having breakfast each day. Day 2 of school, 125 kids show up. And just to give you a comparison, our previously highest numbers for school breakfast in an 8 to 8:30 model was about 65 kids. So having 125 kids by the second day of school, we were saying, okay, well, maybe this is just an anomaly. By day 4, 217 of our 400 students were coming for breakfast early. We had standing room only for Cheerios, juice, and yogurt. So that's the day that, myself and the building assistant who were managing the 217 kiddos for breakfast, we looked at each other and we said, you know what? I think our kids and our families are telling us something. They want school-wide breakfast. They want some after-the-bell models. So it was at that point that we brought our PTO together. We brought our teacher leaders together, our team. We came back around and created our plan for implementing a school-wide after-the-bell breakfast model. Each grade level designed a little bit of a different plan depending on the age level of their children and depending on their arrival time. But when it was all said and done, we would have about 400 to 425 children through the school breakfast line within a 20 to 25-minute process, and that was including our responsive classroom morning meetings as well in that process. So, school breakfast at Fulton is definitely a lively event. There's our picture of our school and a couple of our kiddos going through the breakfast line. We have all hands on deck. All of our staff are in the cafeteria or up in the hallways monitoring and checking in on the different models that we have for breakfast delivery. Our teachers use the time to positively interact with their students. They're checking in on the kids who walked through the door that day without their smile. They're high-fiving former students from other grade levels as they pass them in line. And they're just really taking a couple of minutes to build community before they dive into their academics for the day. The results from moving to an after-the-bell school-wide breakfast program really exceeded our expectations. Our team saw all of the positive results that Elaine referenced earlier, all of the ones associated with research, better attendance. We had fewer discipline referrals, decreases in trips to the nurse's office. But more than that, the bigger picture, we saw students who knew that they would have access to at least 2 meals a day. And we saw that students weren't worrying about where their next meal was coming from or about what they would have to eat that day. And we saw children who were happier and had greater academic confidence because of exactly that. So currently, I serve as the school committee chairperson for Hunger Free Lancaster County, and this is an outstanding volunteer coalition of many organizations in Lancaster that are committed to decreasing the food insecurity crisis that so many of our citizens face. So our goals through the schools committee is to reduce the gap in food security for school-age children in our county, and we really highlight 3 main approaches. We advertise and promote after-the-bell breakfast options. Again, making sure that our most vulnerable and our most at-risk children have options for having that meal at school. After school and summer feeding programs, so we work collectively across our county with many nonprofits to create a strategic and intentional plan to make sure that all of our children have access to summer feeding. And then also connecting into our community gardens initiatives with our local hospital, Lancaster General Health and Penn Medicine. I am just super proud to be a part of Hunger Free Lancaster County because we have really highlighted the importance of school breakfast. We recently were able to recognize 11 of our 16 school districts for promoting after-the-bell breakfast models within our county, and First Lady Wolf was able to give us letters of commendation to celebrate with those school districts who have made the decision to focus on the equity, excellence, and empathy that we know we need to see in our schools, and that school breakfast programs really highlight and support. So we are absolutely grateful to the governor, to the First Lady for the School Breakfast Initiative, for focusing the spotlight on this critical topic and bringing awareness and providing those incentives for schools and districts to consider how school breakfast can positively impact their communities. So as we continue to collaborate on this to address food insecurity through school breakfast programs, please know that the lasting impact on the children in your communities cannot be overstated. It is so important and such a critical issue to talk about. So we're excited to support each of the districts, each of our participants on the webinar today in any way that we can to make a difference for our most vulnerable Pennsylvania citizens. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jill. That was fantastic. And I see we have some questions for you, but we'll save those until the end. Please continue to submit questions if you have them. And now I'm going to turn it over to Michael Mateo as we pull up his presentation. There we go. I'll turn it over to you, Michael.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. We've been really excited here at Gateway to implement breakfast in the classroom. So today I'm going to go through just a few details about how we implemented breakfast in the classroom. So if any of you have questions about that implementation, I'd be glad to help you out today. And I'm really excited to be part of this. As I was scrolling through the list of participants, I noticed that all the school districts that I've ever worked at are represented today. So hello, Lehighton, and hello, Hempfield. We implemented, just a little bit about my school. We are a smaller school. We've got 242 students, and we are 40% free and reduced. Why we moved to breakfast in the classroom was because we became a community eligibility school. Combined with another elementary school in our district, we qualified to become community eligible. Therefore, every student in my building eats breakfast and lunch free of charge. So the anticipation of the increased participation really is what started this whole process off. So as we started looking at it, obviously we've got a lot of challenges. So therefore, I met with our staff, I met with everybody to look at a plan to see what would work well. Teacher buy-in was huge. If there's any principals out there, you know that a lot of teachers are going to say, oh, that's just one more thing on my plate. How am I going to be expected to be the cafeteria monitor? We also looked at menu considerations, what types of food would be served in the classrooms. As Jill alluded to, still having the problem of pancakes and syrup and cereals. That was one of the big considerations. So if you are looking to go to this model, my success came with working with our food service director, and he's been open to whatever suggestions we've had to make the program work. Obviously, another consideration was food in the classroom and the cleanup. Again, as Jill alluded to, meeting with custodians and having a plan in place. And schedule. And the schedule is the reason why we went to the breakfast in the classroom model, because, when we have all the students coming into the cafeteria to eat their breakfast, we were always experiencing that last busload of kids that was late going down to homeroom and not starting their day off on a good foot. So we really wanted to try to eliminate that with this model. It definitely required a change of infrastructure and some new equipment. Obviously we needed prep work. Currently all the breakfast items are delivered to the classrooms by a staff that comes in the morning. So instead of having normal cafeteria aides, now those people are actually prepping the breakfast and working with the kitchen to bring that delivery to the classrooms. We needed some coolers, we needed bags, and then we needed an order form system, because we do track and we are able to give our students choices in their breakfast every day. And I'll go over that as I go through the presentation of kind of the items that we do offer on a daily basis. So it was definitely a change of our infrastructure and making sure all of those pieces were together. You see here, our food service director was able to find some insulated bags that were able to deliver all of our cold items to the classrooms. And then also the hot items are delivered with another type of packaging that's used. We definitely see a couple different procedures in our classrooms. In our primary classrooms, we have student leaders. One thing the program has done has really put a lot of responsibility on the students. The students are responsible for ordering every day, and then there are classroom representatives. These kids here are first graders, and they are the first kids off the bus. They prepare all the breakfast orders for their classrooms. So they unpack the bags, as you see. They go through the order forms, and they actually put the items out for each student. As you can see, these pictures I took are the day we had breakfast pizza, but you also see some cereal options there as well. So these kids really take a big responsibility in making this program work. Most of our teachers have reported that they're not even a part of it anymore. They put up a few things on the board, as you can see, pictures of the cereals that are offered, and the kids can make their choices, but then that's it. Pretty much it runs itself. Our students are really active in making this work, and they love it. And I love it because what I've done is, I'll talk about at the end, is we've been able to get rid of that big breakfast crowd coming off the buses in the morning, and that's been a huge, huge change in the building. As we get into our third and fourth grade classrooms, pretty much the same. The kids take the responsibility to get the breakfast delivered out, and of course taking the orders for the next day. As you can see, we do have pictures here of the breakfast pizza and some of the hot items. I believe this was a packaged pancake item that's on the left there. That's very popular with the students. So one thing that the parents were worried about is that we weren't going to have enough choices for the students. But we ended up, we do have, 3 to 4 different types of cereal every day, and then we do have a hot entree that rotates every single day. They can pick between apple juice, orange juice, and skim milk. You can see a little picture of the order form. That does go back to our cafeteria, so they can track. They actually do track the number of orders and what is ordered every day. And then, in addition, when the students are ordering their breakfast for tomorrow, they're ordering today's lunch. So it really kind of took that whole lunch count process and streamlined it into one simple process that happens right when the kids report to homeroom. And of course, our cleanup considerations, the students have really, again, they've come through. We do place some trash receptacles out in the hallways. So the students are responsible for cleaning up, their breakfast when they're done. The benefits that I've seen so far is obviously increased instructional time. Students are now hitting homeroom on time, and they're eating their breakfast while they're doing morning work. Teachers have been great about providing some extra intervention work as well during that time. It's provided a new instructional time that the teachers didn't have before. We've obviously eliminated all those issues in the cafe when we've got those kids rolling off the buses with their issues from the night before or some upset kids. Our discipline issues have gone down tremendously since we've implemented. And also participation. We've seen an increase in our breakfast participation school-wide, and that has been great, as Jill alluded to, making sure all of those students are equal opportunity to access the breakfast, and no longer is that breakfast, for the kids, the lower-income kids. It's for everybody now, and everybody participates. So that's a little bit of my story. I'd be glad to answer any questions as we go through today, and feel free to contact me if you have anything specific you want to ask. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Great stories. And finally, we're going to turn it over to Jennifer Jarrett from PDE, who is going to talk about an exciting new mini-grant opportunity available to Pennsylvania schools.
Good morning. This is Jen Jarrett from Division of Food and Nutrition. I'm going to just talk a little bit about the history of how these mini grants came about, and then I'll get into the details of the criteria and awarding and what these grants are really intended to be utilized for. So as far as background, in September of 2015, Governor Wolf signed an executive order establishing, pardon me, forgot to move my slide there, establishing the Governor's Food Security Partnership. The partnership is comprised of the secretaries of several Commonwealth departments, and it's responsible for coordinating and providing nutrition and food assistance to all Pennsylvanians. As part of the executive order in July of 2016, Setting the Table, a blueprint for hunger-free PA was released. The plan lays out the administration's goals of providing all Pennsylvanians with access to healthy, nutritious food, which will improve their well-being, health, and independence. One of the goals of this blueprint is to have 60% of students benefiting from free and reduced price school lunch meals also participating in school breakfast by the year 2020. With that goal in mind, the Pennsylvania budget was passed with additional funding made available for school breakfast, which will be dispersed in the form of these mini grants. The mini grants will be administered through the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and a total of $900,000 is available. The grants are to be distributed and utilized during the 2018-2019 school year, and they will be granted to schools with the purpose of implementing or expanding the use of an alternative breakfast program. The timeline for the mini grants starts on March 9th when the mini grants were announced. Applications are due on Friday, April 6, 2018, which is next Friday. We plan to announce the awardees of the mini grants on May 11th, 2018. As a side note, grantees will be paid out for the grants on a per meal reimbursement through their claims from September through 2018 through December of 2018. We will give more information on this when grantees are awarded in May. And I just wanted to make a note that while the Division of Food and Nutrition plans to distribute all of the grant money through claims by December 2018, these funds can still be utilized throughout the entire school year of 2018-2019. There will be a report due for anyone granted the mini grants. That'll be due to the Division of Food and Nutrition on June 30th of 2019. And more information about how to report your results will be distributed when you are informed that you've been awarded a grant. There's criteria which must be met to apply for the mini grants. Multiple schools within an LEA can apply, but one application is to be submitted per each individual school. Each LEA must be a National School Lunch Program sponsor. The LEA cannot have any significant school nutrition program audits or administrative review deficiencies. And LEAs which have excess net cash resources are not eligible unless justification is provided. This information is available on PAIRS under your Child Nutrition Financial Report. Priority will be given to schools that have a free or reduced eligibility of 40 to 100%. We will consider geographic representations when looking over grantees. Breakfast must be available to all students in the building if you're applying for one of these grants. And you may implement a variety of different serving methods within each school that applies. So, for example, you may have a different type of breakfast for your 5th, 6th, and 7th graders than you do for your 1st, 2nd, and 3rd graders based on how you feel the program would be best implemented for the age group. Awardees will need to be sure to implement their alternative breakfast program service with the intention of increasing breakfast participation by 20% or higher. To get that data, we'll use October of 2017 building data as the baseline for the calculation of the 20% increase. Grants will be awarded in amounts from $1,500 to $5,000 per school. Allowable expenses for the grants can include equipment such as kiosks, thermal bags, tablets for mobile point of service, and garbage cans. It can also include temporary, staff training, temporary or short-term labor costs, a kickoff event for your new alternative breakfast model, and adult meals when your adults are joining students for breakfast to model the importance of school breakfast. The grant also includes something called Learning Connection Funds, which can account up to 20% of the mini grant. This can be utilized by principals to educate staff about the importance of breakfast and to garner support from the staff. Examples of uses of the Learning Connection Funds would be promotional contests or challenges, classroom-specific resources, prizes, or incentives which correspond with the school breakfast program initiative of the awarded school. Please note that these Learning Connection costs cannot be paid from the nonprofit school food service account and must be tracked from a separate account. Grant money cannot be utilized for the following: long-term staffing, non-reimbursable breakfast items, or the cost of the reimbursable school breakfast program meals themselves. Final report will be due to Pennsylvania Department of Education, Division of Food and Nutrition on June 30th of 2019. It must be 1 to 2 pages long and include the school's implementation method, accomplishments, lessons learned, challenges, and sustainability plans. You can find a copy of the application in the file share box of this screen of the presentation, and it can also be found on the link of this current slide. Please submit your completed applications to ra-nslp@pa.gov. You can also send any questions you have to that email address, or you can get more information from myself, Jenny Edmondson, or Vonda Cook. So if you need any help with completing your mini grant application, please feel free to contact us at the emails or phone numbers on this slide. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us, and we will get to your questions in the chat box.
Thanks, Jen. Looks like we have quite a few questions, so we'll get started right away. First for Jill, what types of breakfast were you serving to get 400 students through breakfast in 20 minutes?
That kind of goes with one of the other questions as well about the different models that were happening across the school. So each grade level really customized their breakfast plan depending on their age level, similar to what Mike was saying. So our kindergarten and pre-K students in first grade felt most comfortable having their kids come into the cafeteria and eat downstairs in the cafeteria. So they were getting there. You know, it could vary each day. Everything fit within the school nutrition program. So it could be Cheerios, yogurt. Some days it would be a hot breakfast, a breakfast pizza, but it had each of those components. And they would come in and eat right away in the cafeteria, where some of our older classrooms preferred to just send the kids right through the line as they came in and go up to their classroom and eat in their classroom. And like I said, they would start their responsive classroom morning meeting while they were eating and connecting as a classroom community. And then our last piece we were working on was around breakfast carts for our 4th and 5th grade students. So they would actually go upstairs to their rooms and stop by a breakfast cart and take that back to their classroom. So that's how we were able to run so many students through a school breakfast in a very short amount of time. But you know, the actual breakfast items were all consistent with the guidelines for school nutrition and would be just typical items that you would serve in a school breakfast program. So there wasn't anything necessarily special about that. At one of the middle schools in our district where they do school-wide breakfast, they do all breakfast carts, grab-and-go carts for their students, and they run about 550 kids through that program every morning. And they do just serve cold items at that location because the students are all coming through a cart and going in to eat breakfast in their classroom while they are preparing for their morning work during homeroom period.
Okay, another one for you, Jill. Did you go back to breakfast in the classroom, or do you serve all from the cafeteria? Is it grab and go?
So after we returned back to the school after the renovations, that's when we made that differentiated plan. So again, we had all different models happening in the school at that time. It just depended on the children's ages and the team of teachers and what they felt would work best.
Okay, thank you. Next one is, how do you suggest to get principals on board for breakfast after the bell, and for that matter, I guess, breakfast in the classroom, if the principal won't allow students to eat in the classroom?
So if it's okay, Elaine, I'll just weigh in on that
Sure.
too, because we've been doing some work with Hunger Free Lancaster County on working with individual districts. I think the biggest thing is just sitting down and hearing the concerns of each individual site and each individual principal, and then finding the workaround, finding the path that is going to get around those challenges or those barriers. So, that could be something where the kids are eating in the cafeteria. I mean, there were times where some of our classrooms would come in, unpack all their things in their classroom, and then come down to the cafeteria after being in the building 10 minutes. And so we would flip-flop. Two classes would come right inside, eat breakfast for 10 minutes in the cafeteria, while the other classes were unloading their classrooms. They would switch off. And so, again, that's another way to get a lot of kids through the cafeteria in a shorter amount of time. Obviously, for the younger kids, they need more time to eat. 10 minutes is not a whole lot. So we would typically put them at the end of the cafeteria schedule. So if they needed to extend into 15, 20 minutes to actually eat breakfast, they could do that. But since the school breakfast piece, counts as instructional minutes in Pennsylvania, that's been a big sell with school principals. But I think it's really just sitting down, sharing some of the research, talking about this equity piece and how critical it is that as educators and as the school leaders that we are promoting everything we can for the whole child to promote their wellness overall.
Mike, do you have anything to add about any advice for that?
I'm just going to weigh in and say I was not a fan. I'll be perfectly honest. I did not want the food going down to the rooms. So I was one of those principals that had to be talked into it. I can say from experience, we've had very few problems with it. I have not had the expected mess that I thought was going to result from eating in the classroom. And as I said before, the biggest advantage that I see, again, is it gets the kids right into their classroom, right into their classroom community, and that whole morning cafeteria gathering is now gone. So, again, I had said less discipline problems in the morning, and getting right into instruction has been a big shift for us here. So that's kind of my personal take on it.
Okay, thanks. Next question is, I'm wondering about food allergy concerns with food in the classrooms. How are those issues addressed?
Mike, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
I can speak to, we did have a couple allergy issues we discovered. So then what we had to do is make some menu modifications. But the only problem we've had is we had a little girl with a cinnamon allergy, so we couldn't serve Cinnamon Toast Crunch in one classroom. So that was one of the cereals we had to take off the menu. But so far that's been our only issue that we've had to deal with.
Yeah, and I would say from Fulton's experience, that same thing. We really tailored our menu to avoid nuts, to avoid any of those common allergy foods, as I'm sure many school districts do. But then we did have a couple of parent requests that their child not eat school breakfast. They made school breakfast, or they made breakfast at home for their child. And so we came up with some other jobs. We came up with school jobs in the morning for some of those children, so they didn't even really know they were not having the school breakfast. You know, we had another job set aside for them. That could be something with allergies as well. If there's a child who cannot eat the daily breakfast, and what are some other responsibilities around the school community that they could be engaged in during that time?
Okay, looks like we're going to run over time, but we have lots of really good questions. So if our speakers are able to stick around, I think we'll continue to go through the questions. If anyone does have to leave, I just want to point out that that certificate to document your participation in this webinar is now available in the file share box. Okay, who is making sure the students take enough components to qualify for a breakfast? Jill or Michael? Mike?
Mike, I think your system's pretty sophisticated. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean, basically it's down to a routine. The teachers, as I said before, the teachers really don't have much to supervise here, but all the orders that are taken, the teachers do ensure that the students are taking what they have ordered, because what we don't see is a lot of food being returned. We do have a little bit. You know, some of the kids do order breakfast and then they don't eat it, and it goes back to the cafeteria. But overall, you know, the items that are being ordered are being taken. And then while I'm on, I see Lori, how do they handle the point of sale? We have an order form. Every day those order forms are tallied and sent to the cafeteria manager, who inputs them you know, into the point of sale system. So none of that actually happens on the floor. That just gets done via the order form. So again, it's a mix of teacher supervision and the order forms, which, you know, basically it just ensures that the students are getting each component of the breakfast.
Okay, will this webinar be available again? The webinar will not be offered again, but it is being recorded, and we will post it on the Project PA website, and I've included that website address in the chat box. Question for Gateway: how much time is spent serving breakfast in the classrooms with children helping and ordering for the next day?
In our primary classrooms, it does take a little bit longer. So we usually, our students roll into homerooms about 10 till 9, and they're usually eating breakfast till about 9:15. So a little bit over 20 minutes that breakfast takes up. But again, during that 20 minutes, they are doing classroom meetings, they're doing morning work. They may be even introducing today's ELA lesson at the same time. So it is productive time. Our 3rd and 4th graders are completing their breakfast duties really pretty much within 10 to 15 minutes. The routine is they come in, they put their stuff in their locker, they go to the little breakfast cart that's outside the classroom, they grab their items, they write down their order for the next day, and then they're in the class, they're eating their breakfast, and usually by 9:10 they're wrapped up and they're right into instruction. So it has not taken a lot of time in the classrooms, and I credit that to the staff here that really does a good job of getting it prepared and ready when the students come in. There's, you know, it's ready to go. There's no time delay at all. So that's a credit to our staff, and they've streamlined it over this past year.
Okay, will the breakfast mini grant slides be available for download? Yes, they are available for download in the file share box in the lower left-hand side of the screen. Next question: we are not a school that is CEP. We would like suggestions on how to start programs like Breakfast in the Classroom when you have more paid students.
Hi,
So I can, oh, go ahead. Yep.
this is Jen Jarrett from DFN here. You know, if you're not CEP and you want to do breakfast in the classroom, and you wanted to talk to us one-on-one, I can certainly, you can certainly send me an email with your school specifics, and we can talk about a plan for your grant application or for your breakfast program. We've seen the program be successful regardless of whether the students are CEP or not. But Jill, I'm gonna let you answer with with your suggestions as well.
Yeah, sure. So from the Hunger Free Lancaster County perspective, again, we're working with all of the school districts in the county that have very different free and reduced lunch rates, CEP and non-CEP. But I think one of the big wins is around looking at those breakfast carts potentially. You may not be able to go to a full breakfast in the classroom model, but having the quick grab and go where kiddos can pick up their breakfast and head into their classroom without having to go to a whole different section of the cafeteria or be kind of have that social stigma that Elaine had talked about earlier. So there's a lot of different creative ways that schools are addressing that non-CEP districts that I think, Jennifer has great resources. There's opportunities if you want to connect with us through Hunger Free Lancaster County as well. Central Pennsylvania Food Bank, we've got a connectivity to a school breakfast outreach coordinator who'd be happy to brainstorm any solutions for sure.
And I'm going to chime in on that because my students, when they go to 5th grade, they go to a different building that's not community eligible. So therefore, they've had challenges there getting the kids back in that breakfast routine. So as Jill said, they have some grab-and-go carts as the students are entering. They've gone to a model where they're taking their food up to their room. So they've kind of addressed that here in our district because, again, the students are no longer eligible when they get to 5th grade. So that's an interesting problem that we've had to deal with here.
Okay, how are the reimbursable meals checked?
Unfortunately, I can't answer that because I don't have that problem because we are community eligible. So I do know if we become uneligible, we're going to continue to run the program. So we're going to come up with a way, again, on the order forms and to track that with the reimbursable meals. So our food service director has a plan in place for that because he's talked to me already because he thinks that we may not be eligible next year.
Would anyone else like to address that question?
Yes, this is Jen again. As far as making sure that reimbursable meals are checked, it'll depend on how the meals are recorded at the point of service. You want to make sure that someone is there, if it is in the classroom or at a kiosk, that someone is there checking that all of the components have been served. You can implement a serve-only breakfast where things are already packaged together and served as one unit, or if you're going to be offer versus serve, there just needs to be someone trained who's checking that each student is taking all the required elements and checking it off at the point of service. Usually with a classroom method, there's a roster that gets checked off once a reimbursable meal is served, and then that sheet will get sent back down to the food service office, and the meals will be consolidated from there. If you have specific questions, again, feel free to call me, and we can work out a plan of action.
Okay, I see some questions about Jennifer's slides being available. They should be in that document called PA School Breakfast Initiative slides. If for some reason they are not, I'm not able to check that at this moment. I will give you my email address, and if you need me to send you those slides, I will. Jennifer, realistically, what is the chance that a school with less than 40% free and reduced to receive a grant?
This is going to be dependent on how many grant applications we receive. If we have grant money and can grant everyone what they've asked for, of course we'll do that. We won't get into utilizing the criteria that I mentioned earlier until we start seeing, $900,000 or more being requested. So there is a very good chance. I would certainly put in the application. They're pretty quick to fill out, and as it looks right now, it would be a pretty good chance. I don't think we're near our 900,000 yet. So please put in your application, and we'll certainly consider you.
Okay, are there any suggestions on how to run a successful breakfast in the classroom program for a school feeding 900 plus students with 30 students eating per classroom? Teachers also want individual bags because identifying reimbursable meals is not time effective for them in the morning, resulting in limited or no options or overproduction and waste in offering a variety of breakfast options.
Hi, this is Jen Jarrett again. For something like this, you may want to look into, depending on the age group, if it's younger students, not 9 through 12, you may want to consider doing a serve-only program, or the grab and go might be a really good option for these students. Again, if you wanted to contact Division of Food and Nutrition, we'd be happy to talk to you about different plans that you could utilize with your specific situations.
Okay, why does funding always have to be geared towards the lowest income schools? Higher income schools have as many, if not more, issues with hunger in many cases.
You know, I really can't speak to why the grants were issued toward the lower income schools. This specific grant is targeting students who are eating school lunch and are free and reduced price eligible, but are not participating in school breakfast. So we're looking to get those kids who are participating in lunch, free and reduced lunch, to also participate in breakfast, and that's why it's set up this way. But like I had said earlier, grants can be awarded to schools with less than the 40% free or reduced eligible students. We won't discount those by any means.
Okay, if the funds are coming into the nonprofit food service account, how do you suggest we pay for the principal incentive items since they're not allowable costs from the nonprofit foods account?
This is a question that I am prepared to answer, but I would need to speak to the individual school districts themselves because accounting can be set up several different ways. The money can go into the nonprofit food service account and be utilized, be transferred and utilized in another account, but again, I would need to speak to the specific situation for accounting of each school district. So School District of Philadelphia, if you want to send me an email or give me a phone call, we can talk about how your accounts are set up and how that would work for you.
How are you dispersing the grants?
So as I had said earlier, these will be dispersed on a per meal basis through the claims that are put into pairs from September through December of next school year. I'll be giving more information when people are awarded the grants, but that's how it will be done. September through December through your claims for reimbursement in pairs.
Okay. With a district of 3 secondary and 7 elementary schools and only one school at or above the 40%, if the grant was awarded, would all schools qualify or only the one school? In addition, and in reference to an earlier question asked, why only the one school of 10 at or above the 40%? What might be the chances, expectations of the grant being awarded? I think you've addressed that last part, Jen.
Yeah, I did address the last part, but because the applications are one per each school, it'll be done on a case-by-case basis. And it also depends on the amount of money that's asked for each grant. It's not going to just be determined by the amount of students who are qualified for free and reduced price meals. There are other things that are to be considered.
Okay, I think this is for Mike or Jill. How are you doing your point of sale system? And that might be a more appropriate question for your food service directors. I'm not sure if either of you are going to be able to answer that, but if you are.
As I said, we use an order form in the classrooms, and then the food service manager then inputs that back in the cafeteria, after the meals have been distributed, and again, they've made sure the kids are taking them, then they're inputted after the fact. So I did have somebody in the chat room ask for that order form, so I did post that. If you want to take a look at that, that's what the kids use every day, and that's how they track the meals and input it in the system.
Yeah, and this is Jill. I would just add that, again, there's a lot of different systems that schools put in place for that. There is a middle school, again, that uses iPads, and students just enter their ID number in, while one of the food services staff or a building assistant who's trained in those processes and procedures supports that process. So it can look very different and be very customized depending on each site and the needs of their sites.
Okay, if students order breakfast and do not eat it, are they charged?
So I think for both Mike and I, because we are CEP schools, that's not an issue for us. I'm not sure if anybody else has input on that.
Okay, I want to verify that the mini grants cover meal incentives for classroom teachers to eat with their students, as well as the superintendent and principal to join classes periodically. Is that part of the normal grant allocation or the 20% managed outside of the food service fund?
Teacher meals and, superintendent and principals joining classes periodically, that would be part of the general grant money. That's not part of the 20% utilized outside of the school food service fund. So you can cover those costs with the other portion of the grant money.
Okay, I think, Jen, this one is for you as well. Our responsibility as a food service department is to observe the trays to be sure they take the correct components to count as a breakfast meal. This direction, I believe, is from PDE, Administrative Review. I don't see how dropping off food components to a classroom via order or not is okay by the state. Nobody is ensuring the students take, for example, the fruit or juice component. I don't see how PDE would be okay with this. I'm sure teachers don't want this responsibility.
Well, what you're saying is correct. So, someone does need to be accountable, and we do check that during an administrative review. But there have been plenty of successful breakfast in the classroom models that students are taking what they need. There does need to be somebody designated to take responsibility for making sure each student takes a reimbursable meal, whether it's the teacher or there's someone who is overseeing each classroom and comes down and serves the meals. It's up to the school how you want to do it, and you may be best served speaking to other schools who've done breakfast in the classroom successfully to see how they do it and how they get everyone on board to make sure meals are being distributed as reimbursable meals and counted correctly.
Central Valley has asked for the email of someone to contact to discuss their district-specific challenges and discuss ideas. I put up on the screen the slides from Jennifer's presentation with the PDE contact information. Is that correct, Jennifer?
Yes, you could call any of us on here or any of our nutritionists. So if you dial directly to one of us, or whether you use our 1-800 number and state what you're looking to do, we'll connect you with someone who can help.
Okay, if you don't reach a 20% increase in participation, do you still receive the grant?
Yes. The grant money is going to be awarded before the final report is due. I'll have to look into whether money would be taken back, but I as far as I know, it wouldn't. That's your goal, but it is not a requirement. If it doesn't happen, we're not going to come back and take those per meal reimbursements back.
Okay, lots of great questions and lots of wonderful answers. It looks like we have answered all of the questions, so I want to thank all of our presenters and all of our participants for hanging on as we went overtime. Again, lots of items available to download from the file share box, including the certificate to document attendance in today's webinar. So thank you again and have a great day.